Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to another layer by layer. In today's tutorial, we're going to take a look at making snap fit cases with live hinges. So let's take a look here. So I 3D printed and designed this snap fit case, and it has a little top cover with some snap fits. And inside, you'll see that I have here a reel of washi tape. That's that lovely craft tape. And this opens up like this, and you see that the three of these pieces here are all connected with a very thin live hinge. So these two halves connect together like this. And then this top cover here, you see here that the nubs are on the side of the bottom half of the case. And those snap and snap. There's a little bit of an opening there, but that's okay. But you can see here there's that second live hinge for the top cover. And then this very nice curve here. So the live hinge here is only two layers thin. So if you're doing a 0.2 layer height when you're 3D printing with an FDM machine, it's it's only 0.4 millimeters thin. So the only other stuff here is that it has this cylinder to hold the tape in place. And then you'll note that there's a little bit of a lip here that mates with the inside of the top half of the case. There's also some lips here that kind of prevent it from sliding out. But yeah, and then there's like this little piece here that's extra. That just kind of makes it easier to open, to kind of get your finger in there. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to cover today, how to make this snap fit case with live hinges. So let's jump into Fusion 360. You go into tunnel mode for a little bit, and then we'll switch to Fusion. So I'll have the design file for this very case in the description of the video, so check that out. There's some extra bits here like the latch and the internal kind of cylinder for holding the tape, and some little relief holes here so you can see how much tape you have left, and then those walls here. But I'm just going to cover how to do kind of a simple version of this case. So let's do that. I'll make a new tab. Let's start off with creating a sketch on the floor plane here, and let's decide how big we want our case to be. Let's say it's 50 by 50, just to make it a square. I'll start with a rectangle tool. I'm just going to draw out a rectangle. Let me type in 50 by 50 and hit enter. So there's a rectangle. What I want to do with a rectangle is I want to center it with the center origin of our grid. So I'm going to create two lines that have midpoint constraints. So I'll just roll over until I get that midpoint, click, and then I'll come out here, and then I'll make sure that that is perpendicular with the line I just created. Create another line, and then let's just close it there. So now I have these perpendicular lines, and the last thing to do here is to do a midpoint constraint of this point with that line. And now I have a point that I can move by using the coincident constraint to go to the center of the origin there. So now that's fully constrained. I'll grab these two lines and make them construction lines. And then we'll start with the next half of the case. So I'll just make another rectangle like that. Using the equal constraint, I can say I want this line to be the same length as that line, and that line. Now they're the same. They're intersecting, so let me go ahead and push this off a little bit. I want to connect these two with some more midpoint constraint lines. So let's do one here and then one here. And then I can just say this line needs to be horizontally or vertically constrained. And now I have these two rectangles. Cool. So this is going to be the bottom half of the case. And that's the top half of the case. To create the live hinge, let's make another line that is perpendicular. And then we'll say this needs to be maybe 4 millimeters away. And then I can make another one of these with a mirror, and then using that first line as the mirror line, and hit OK. And then so that I can select just one of these, I'll select that center line and make it also a constraint, a construction line. Let's give this construction line a length. So how thick do we want our case to be? Let's say it's 12 millimeters thick. So that is going to be the length of our live hinge. The live hinge is looking kind of wide. So let me make that 4 millimeters by making that 4 into a 2, because we're mirroring that. So it's really 4 like that. And then next up, let's make the top cover. So the top cover is going to be a little bit longer. So I just drew it out. It's a little bit thinner, or a little bit, yeah, a little bit thinner, and then a little longer than our actual two rectangles. So instead of applying dimensions, I'm just going to say I want these two lines to have a distance of 2 millimeters. And I'll say the same thing here. This and this have a 2 millimeter distance. And then I'm going to create the length of this needs to be the thickness of our case. So it was going to be 12 plus a 1. Ooh, it's going to be 12 millimeters thick of the case, right? Plus 1 millimeter of wall thickness plus 2 millimeters of distance that is our length. So it's really going to be 15 millimeters. But that's important to kind of break it out so that you know that your case is 12 millimeters thick. You're going to have 1 millimeter of wall thickness that you need to kind of offset, and then 2 millimeters of distance for our live hinge. So that is the kind of formula that we create for the length of our top cover, because it's going to be printing upright. So we need to kind of do it that way. So let's create some construction lines that will midpoint center constrain these two like that. And then let's make this that 2 millimeter length. Let's make that a construction line. And then let's give this some lines here that we can mirror. Let's say this is going to be 4 millimeters wide. And then we'll mirror that line with the construction line. And then we'll get a live hinge that's 8 millimeters wide. Or we can make this 6 millimeters. It's looking a little thin here. Let's make it 8. So that would be 16. But yeah, as long as it's 2 millimeters distance, that's pretty good. Yeah, and then that's those are our main sketches that we're going to work with. All right, let's hit OK, and then we're going to start extruding our bases here. So 1, 2, and 3. Let's extrude those with a 1 millimeter thickness. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to create some fillets to these edges that I want to be filleted. So I want these 4 edges to have some pretty big fillets. Let's give it 5. And then this top cover, I want this to have a 2 millimeter fillet on just these 2 edges here on the outside. So those will have a 2 millimeter fillet. Next up, we're going to create our wall thicknesses. So with the extrude command, I'm going to switch that from the regular extrude to a thin extrude. Select these 2, the top and the bottom half of the case. And then we said it's going to be 12 millimeters. So it's really 12 divided by 2, which is 6. 6 here. So that's how tall they're going to be. And just make sure that the wall location is going on the inside of our extrusion of our base plates there. And then the operation is already set to join. So I hit OK. We want to open up these walls here. So let's go ahead and just select that wall and then do a negative extrude here so that it cuts it away. And I'll do that for this half too. -2 cuts it away. All right, so now we have those open tops there because we're going to have a top here. Speaking of the top, with that surface selected, I'll thin extrude that. Make sure it's thin extrude. And then this is going to be whatever the length we want. I think 5 millimeters is what or 6 millimeters, which is the half of our case. So let's hit OK. And then we're going to do a pretty similar thing where we cut away this wall here like that. All right, so that is looking pretty good so far. Next up, we're going to create our nubs for snapping this cover to the bottom half of the case. So for me to do that, I'm just going to select the surface and then create a new sketch. That way I create a sketch on that surface. And I'm going to project in just one of these edges, just like that. And then I'm going to make my nub, my snap fit nub, something like that. Let's make it 8 millimeters wide by 1.5 millimeters tall. And then I'm going to have a 0.2 millimeter distance between the edge of this and the tip of that, just like that. And then I can extrude that. Let's say we want it to be 3 millimeters. Here, and then I'll hit tab on my keyboard so I can do a tapered angle and do -45 so it prints without any supports. All right, so now that I have that, I want to mirror that feature onto the opposite side of that bottom half of the case. So we'll bring up a mirror feature, Make sure the object type is set to features. So then I can select that extrude from the timeline. Select my mirror plane as this plane here, and you get a little green preview of where it's going to go. That is where I want it to go. And that is the first snap fit, the set of snap fit nubs for the bottom half of the case. Next up, we'll do one for this side, and the nubs are actually going to be on the inside of the top cover. So let's select this surface, create a sketch on that surface, bring in that line, and because of the way the thing folds over, the snap fit nub is actually be tall or vertical this way. So we'll use the same dimensions, 1.5 wide by 8 millimeters. It doesn't have to be, this is 4 millimeters or 5. There you go, 5. And then we'll do that same, the distance will change actually. So I'm just going to do 0.2 on the tip here, and then 2 millimeters on that side. But I'll show you a trick here on how to kind of line these up. So the same extrusion length here, 3 millimeters. Hit tab on your keyboard, -45 on that taper angle. I'm going to go ahead and show the dimensions for these two nubs so that I can get a look of them and kind of edit the distances without having to go into edit sketch mode. So now that I have that, I will do my mirror. I will mirror that nub on the top cover, doing the same mirror command. And now we have our two nubs on the top cover. Cool. So now that I have these three pieces, before I start creating my live hinge, I'm actually going to save the live hinge extrusion for the very end, because what we need to do is we need to kind of test this out with the move command. But before that, before I forget, I want to add a lip to the top half of the case so that it mates with the bottom half of the case. And to do that, I'm just going to go here on this edge here, create a new sketch, and I will project in this line here from the internal wall. And I'm going to make a series of lines. So let's see if you can follow me. So I'm going to start off on the tip of that line. I'm going to go across and go up. And I'm going to make sure that all these lines are perpendicular at 90 degrees. So I'm going to go across, and go down, and then at an angle, I'm going to connect it off to the purple line there. So I'll start sketching out the dimensions. So this, I want to make it 0.01 millimeters. That's going to be the clearance that we want, some distance between this lip and the bottom half of the case. This is going to be 1 millimeter thick. And then I'm going to do a 45-degree angle right there. And then I'm going to make a line that connects this point to that point. And then I want these lines to be perpendicular. So now I can grab this line and make it a construction line. And then now it's fully constrained. Almost. I want the lip to be 3 millimeters tall. So there we go there. So that is basically our profile for the lip. It has that 45-degree angle, so it prints without any supports, and it has that 0.1 millimeter of kind of offset so that it can actually fit in between the walls here. So let's do a sweep command. So we'll do a sweep, select this as a profile, and then our path is going to be this top edge here. And then you can see here that that profile now sweeps along the whole curvature thanks to those fillets, and it goes all the way to the end here on the other side. So that is our nubbins. And now you can start moving things into place. So let's go ahead and move our bodies. So let's grab body 1, which is the top half of the case. And I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees, push it forward to line it up, and then push it right where the lip is going to go inside of the case. And I'll hit OK there. So now you can see here that that is looking good. And you can see we have some clearance here between these two surfaces, that 0.1 millimeter. If you have a printer that needs a little bit more tolerances, then just add more to that distance. And then we're going to flip this top cover into place. So we're going to do 90 degrees, push it forward, and then push it up. And then you can see here that that is, that's what it's going to look like. Kind of want to have 2 millimeters of clearance here, or just 1 millimeter here of clearance. like that. And then in order to kind of get an idea of what our nub is going to go in, I like to do this trick where I apply a acrylic material to the top cover so that I can actually see through it. And you can see here that the nubs aren't lining up. So let me bring up that sketch for that nub, which was this one here. And I'm going to change that 2 millimeter distance to something like 1, maybe 3, until I have a nice distance here. Let's try 4. And I can go in here and take a look here. See what's that distance. I want a minimum distance of 2.2 millimeters. It's 0.5 right now. So let's do 4.5. There we go. It's looking better. And then there you can see we have a clearance between those two of 0.2 millimeters, about 2.2 millimeters. So that looks pretty good. I kind of want to extrude this out a little bit more. So let's go ahead and do that. Back over here, we can change that 6 to an 8. And then you can see here that that is longer. And I can even make this maybe 7. And you can make it a full, to match up these two nubs with their lengths, you can make this even 1 more millimeter. Let's say 9. And that's looking pretty good. And you are going to have that distance between these two surfaces for the top cover and the bottom half of the case because of that live hinge. Needs to have a little bit of relief. But that's looking pretty good. That's pretty much how it needs to be. And then you can look on the inside there that if all your clearances match out, it should work out pretty good. So let's go ahead and delete these move commands because we're kind of going to start doing our live hinge. So bringing back that sketch number 1. I will select these 2 live hinge profiles and then extrude them to a 0.4 millimeters, not negative, but just 0.4 millimeters. Hit OK, and that's going to connect those 3 pieces together. And then to kind of finalize this, I like to do these fillets here on these edges for the longer live hinge. It's going to be maybe like 4. Does that look good? 4 or 5. 6. That looks cool. That way it kind of looks a little bit better. And then we can do the same here for this this shorter live hinge for the top cover. Let's do 1 millimeter there. And these 2 over here. I gotta rotate. There we go. Okay. So that's pretty much ready to print now. If you're using an FDM printer, again, you want to use a layer height of 0.2 millimeters, which is pretty common. But yeah, everything here is pretty much the same as this washi tape one. There's just a bigger extrusion, and then there's a center hole with the cylinder to hold the tape, and then just some circular pattern grills here. And also that little lip here, that little latch to kind of help you open it up. But you really don't need it. It's just kind of for aesthetics. And there's that lip here. It kind of helps the 2 halves from sliding out of each other, but you don't really need that. But if you do, you can add those in there to this area here. But that is pretty much it. You can add user parameters to make it a parametric, or you can just modify, these edges here and just make sure that your top cover, that you can test it. You can always go back in your timeline and then move the bodies and kind of build that folded case to make sure that everything lines up. All the nubs are lined up nicely. But this is kind of a neat design. I think it will be applicable to other things like here's a smaller version with a little bit of a different shape. As this opens up here, you can see I have these little USB-C to type A adapters. So you can, I don't know, maybe it's just reminding me that it kind of looks like the bubble tape from the 90s. So you can have some bubble tape in there or whatever. And then you can add some more things, like maybe a little thing here to put on your hip, like a little clip or something. But kind of a neat design, I think. And one other thing I want to mention is that I want to try this out. I haven't tried it yet. I want to try printing the first 2 layers. That's the live hinges here. Print those in TPU filament and then do a filament swap, so that this first layer is like that TPU flexible, because I think at some point, this right here, this live hinge looks like it's going to break at some point. As I keep flexing it like that over and over again, I'm sure it's going to break. But for now, it hasn't broken. I've opened it maybe 50 times, maybe more. But I want to try that TPU filament swap where the first 2 layers are TPU, and then I switch it to this PLA filament so that I have that hard, rigid snaps, but that flexible first 2 layers. So I'm going to give that a try and let folks know how that goes out. That's going to do it for this tutorial. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. But until then, remember to make a great day. Bye, folks.